Yeah, so recently I was using my wah pedal and I was picking up what I believe was an AM radio station. And it was pretty weird, like when it was in the toe down position, the station was faintly there. When it was in heel down, I was getting it loud and clear, and it was, definitely enough to notice it. If you weren't playing, you'd be picking up the radio, and some talk radio guys in my wah pedal. I'm going, how the heck is that happening? So I kind of sat down and I started thinking about how that could possibly happen, and I picked a few people's brains, and I came to the conclusion after the second time it happened. I wiggled my cord in the jack here, the output jack, and then the problem went away. So I figured probably the the output jack ground was not making a good connection, and it's kind of hard to see, but there's this washer with some really big jagged teeth on it, and it looks like it has some kind of black finish on it, and probably this crinkle paint here is coating the inside where this thing goes through, so it's having I'm not going to say a dodgy ground, it may be a high enough resistance ground to where, this would allow, somehow it became a radio tuner specifically to that one station, whatever station it was. So what I decided to do was I just simply soldered a little piece of resistor lead from the ground lug there on the jack to this ground point where it goes to the pot, and so far my problem is not returned. But then I realized that I had another issue really to think about, and that was the fact that this bottom plate has this little rubber edge on it, and both sides of this are painted from the factory. The inside's like this gray, the outside's the black with the white lettering. And initially when I first had this problem, I thought, oh, I'll just file the paint off the insides of these holes so that it could make a good contact with ground. But the thing is, when you put the feet on, it squishes this rubber, and it kind of prevents the bottom plate from touching the enclosure. So I devised a little way to be able to ensure that this bottom cover is part of the Faraday cage. When this is all together, this whole thing creates a Faraday cage, which is supposed to keep EMI and RFI and all that stuff out of your circuit. And these inductors are susceptible to picking up hum and motor noises and stuff like that. So it's important in this sort of a circuit to make sure that you have 100% Faraday cage happening. And so anyways, I devised a way to get a little like a metal sleeve that goes around the screw, so that when you put the bottom cover on, this metal piece makes contact with the wall shell, and then you get a positive ground. Because when you tighten this thing down, this puts pressure on this little sleeve, and you get a 100% positive connection to ground. Now I got lucky. I have this little, I don't know what it is. It's some kind of weird, I don't know what this came off of. I apparently took these off something that I parted out, like something that broke, and I pulled these things off of it thinking one day I'm going to use it for something. And so it actually works out great. I just filed that piece off, this piece that sticks up here, I filed it off. Filed out this hole just very slightly so that there'd be a nice snug fit there. Get a nice positive contact with ground. And so I know you're probably thinking, oh, you know, BFD, big flipping deal. Who cares if the thing's not grounded? You know, it's not that big a deal. Well, so this drawing isn't totally exactly correct, but for the most part, it's pretty close. As far as the, well, when I say not correct, I forgot that the sides slant on here, so I have it drawn as a kind of a right angle. But so I drew this in AutoCAD so that I could have it tell me what are these areas of these different sides. So after I drew it up, I figured out that the left side and right side and heel and toe end of the enclosure and the top are about 64 square inches, and the bottom plate is 34.78 square inches. Now that, let's just say 35 square inches, you know, that's 35% of the total surface area of this wah pedal. When everything's together, you know, you're creating this Faraday cage. When you take this out of the equation, you're missing 35% of your Faraday cage. You know, your wah pedal is now a little more susceptible to EMI, RFI. You know, it's going to pick up noise potentially a little bit easier because you have 35% of your shielding missing if you don't have a solid contact to ground. Now, I mean, I've heard other people saying they've had radio appear in their wahs. Some people suggest putting in capacitors and stuff, which if I ever have this problem again, which I don't think I will, but if I do, I'll look at that option. But I really think part of the problem was that, you know, I didn't have this part of the grounding system, and this output jack had kind of a dodgy high resistance ground because, you know, it was relying on the enclosure for its connection to ground. So you know, just something to think about. I know this might be maybe a little bit nerdy for me to sit here and draw up stuff in AutoCAD so I can figure out areas, but you know, I'm just doing this to make a point that you know, it's important. Like the more modern wah pedals, you know, the inside of this thing is aluminum. It's bare aluminum, makes good contact with the enclosure. But I think possibly these Italian-made wahs may be especially susceptible to this problem because of the fact that there's this white rubber border on it and the thing is painted on both sides. So if you're having a problem with radio in your wah, maybe this might be a solution for you. So hopefully you got something out of this video and you found it helpful. And if this does indeed fix your problem, or you found this to be interesting, leave me a comment. Let me know what you think. So thanks for watching. See you again the next time.